Welcome to Into the Margins, where we dive into the margins to find what makes businesses profitable in order to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs.
It's great to be here for this deep dive.
Yeah, and today we're actually looking at this massive stack of research, sociology papers, some really fascinating business case studies, and we're doing this with one very specific mission in mind.
Right.
We want to completely decode what is arguably the most misunderstood, entirely unmeasurable growth engine in business.
Unmeasurable being the key word there.
Exactly. So I want you to picture this scenario. You've got two competing founders. Now, founder A spends, let's say, $50,000 meticulously optimizing their ad funnels. Like they are constantly refreshing a dashboard, staring at cost per click metric.
Right.
But then you have founder B, and founder B spends that exact same amount of time, but they're just having unstructured coffee with 12 highly specific people. Fast forward like 2 years. Founder A is just bleeding margins just to acquire a single customer. But founder B, they just closed this massive exclusive partnership that completely doubled their revenue, and they had zero ad spend.
Yeah.
And the question is, why does that happen? And I think it's because we're just so obsessed with what we can measure on a screen that we completely neglect the messy, invisible web of relationship capital that actually runs the market.
It really is the absolute definition of like diagnostic muddy waters.
Yeah.
Because you cannot easily measure trust on a spreadsheet. It's just not possible. But if you look at the historical context, the nature of this invisible web, it's undergone a radical transformation.
How so?
Well, through most of the 20th century, relationship capital was aggressively exclusionary. Like we're talking about the classic old boys club model.
Right, the oak-paneled rooms and all that.
Exactly. Exclusive country clubs, closed-door meetings. If you weren't, born into the right zip code, or if you didn't attend a very specific Ivy League school, you simply didn't have access to the capital or the handshakes. The network was basically a walled garden.
Yeah, and today those gates have essentially been blown off their hinges. I mean, we operate in this totally democratized hybrid landscape of digital platforms and, physical spaces.
Absolutely.
But I feel like that democratization created a brand new problem. Because the landscape is so open now, the sheer volume of noise is just deafening. There are millions of voices shouting for attention.
Yeah, the signal-to-noise ratio is terrible.
It really is. So founders get overwhelmed by that noise, and what do? They retreat back to their dashboards.
Right back to the safety of the numbers.
Exactly. They retreat to the safety of sales funnels, and they completely ignore the highest return on investment activity available to them, which is crazy.
It is, but it makes psychological sense.
Right, but the way I've always viewed building a network, and tell me if you agree with this, is that it functions exactly like compound interest in a retirement account.
Oh, I like that.
Because it is agonizingly slow at the beginning. Year one, you attend a few events, you reach out to someone, and it feels like you've earned a fraction of a penny. You're sitting there thinking, well, that was a total waste of an afternoon.
Yeah, you feel like you're getting nowhere.
Right. But over time, as those individual connections begin to intersect and introduce each other, the math totally changes. It generates inbound opportunities and brand equity that a Facebook ad campaign simply cannot purchase. I mean, you cannot buy baseline trust with a sponsored post.
You absolutely cannot. And that compounding effect, it only happens if you fundamentally shift your perspective from transactional to relational.
Yes.
Because the outdated idea of networking, going to a mixer, holding a lukewarm drink, and just aggressively handing out 50 rectangles of cardstock that is completely dead.
Oh, thank goodness it is.
Right. I mean, if your goal is just to distribute business cards, you are wasting your time, and honestly, you're probably damaging your reputation.
We have all been cornered by that person at an event. The one. They are physically shaking your hand, but their eyes are scanning the room over your shoulder.
Looking for someone more important.
Exactly. Evaluating if there is someone better they should be talking to. It feels entirely parasitic. It's just this hunt for a quick transaction.
And people can sense that desperation immediately.
Instantly.
Yeah. So the shift requires understanding a really basic sequence. Visibility leads to trust, and trust leads to inbound referrals. In any highly competitive market, the most technically skilled provider rarely wins by default.
Wait, really? You think skill doesn't win out?
Well, not on its own. The most trusted provider wins. The more people who genuinely understand your character and your business, the higher the mathematical probability of a collaboration.
That makes a lot of sense.
But to really grasp how this unseen engine functions, we need to look at the actual architecture of human networks. And there is this foundational piece of sociological data from 1973.
1973.
Yeah, 1973. It's by a researcher named Mark Granovetter, and it's titled The Strength of Weak Ties.
Okay, I have heard of this. And this paper completely upends how most of us think about our social circles, right?
Completely.
Because intuitively, if I need a massive favor or if I'm looking for a game-changing business partnership, I assume I should go to my inner circle. My closest friends, my loyal team members, my family.
Your strong ties.
Right, my strong ties. And they're incredible for emotional support and, operational stability. But Granovetter proved that for novel information, things like a new market opportunity or a sudden opening for a contract, your strong ties are actually somewhat useless.
Mathematically useless for that specific goal, yeah.
Which is wild. The real power actually lies in your weak ties.
Yeah. And the underlying mechanism behind Granovetter's research is absolutely brilliant. Think about the topography of your relationships. Your strong ties, your best friends, your immediate colleagues, they all operate in the exact same echo chamber that you do.
Okay.
You all know the same people, you read the same industry news, you are exposed to the same opportunities, you share the same oxygen.
So if there is a massive opportunity out there and I don't know about it, my best friend probably doesn't know about it either.
Exactly. Because you're in the same bubble.
Right.
But a weak tie, say an acquaintance you chat with twice a year or someone you met briefly at a seminar, they operate in an entirely different cluster of society.
Oh, I see.
They act as a bridge. That weak tie spans the gap between your echo chamber and a completely foreign network, giving you access to resources and information your inner circle couldn't possibly reach.
Man, that is fascinating. But if these weak ties are the actual bridges to new capital, it forces a really uncomfortable question about how we spend our time.
It does.
Like, if I'm a founder, and I know I need a high volume of these acquaintances to bridge me to new clusters, the immediate temptation is to fire up LinkedIn and spam 1,000 people with connection requests.
The spray and pray approach.
Exactly. It just becomes a numbers game. So how do we systematically build these bridges without treating people like trading cards to be collected?
Well, that temptation is exactly why so many founders fail at this. Spamming destroys trust before it can even form. You don't build weak ties randomly. You have to engineer them through strategic placement.
Strategic placement, what does that look like?
You have to physically or digitally plant your flag in specific ecosystems. And you choose those ecosystems based entirely on the profitability gap you're currently trying to solve in your business.
Okay, so it's not just showing up, it's showing up in the right room. Let's map out what those rooms actually look like, starting on the macro global scale. Because obviously, LinkedIn is the default digital macro environment for, asynchronous professional discussion. But on the physical side, you have these massive industry behemoths. We're talking about South by Southwest, TechCrunch Disrupt, these mega conferences with tens of thousands of attendees.
Massive oceans of people.
Right. And if you are a local service provider, say an accounting firm in Ohio trying to get local tax clients, flying to South by Southwest is a terrible ROI.
Oh, absolutely terrible.
You are literally a drop of water in an ocean. But if your profitability gap requires you to understand where an entire industry is moving 3 years from now, that room is invaluable.
Because the mechanism of action at those mega conferences isn't direct selling.
No, nobody is buying tax services at a keynote.
Exactly. It is trend spotting and serendipity mapping. You don't go to the main stage panels to learn. You go to the hotel lobby bars, the unofficial after parties, the satellite events.
That's where the real work happens.
Yeah, you're there to find other leaders who are thinking on a global scale. You are there to form high-level strategic partnerships and position yourself as a node in a global nervous system.
But what if your gap is hyper-local? Like, what if you don't need a global nervous system, you just need a geographic fortress? You need to be the undeniable go-to authority in your zip code.
And then that requires a total pivot to a micro-localized strategy. You leave the mega conferences behind entirely.
Okay.
And you integrate yourself into groups like BNI, that's Business Network International, or your local Chamber of Commerce.
Right, the classic local groups.
Yeah, because the dynamic here is entirely different. You aren't hunting for a unicorn tech integration. You are demonstrating extreme reliability over time.
Consistency.
Yes, in a local chamber, showing up consistently, providing solid advice, being deeply embedded in the community's economic health that builds a bedrock reputation. You literally become a fixture.
And sandwiched right between the local chamber and the massive global conference is one of my absolute favorite environments, the boutique meetup.
Oh, those are gold.
They really are. These are those highly specific gatherings, usually 20 to 30 people in a rented co-working space on a Tuesday night, eating bad pizza.
Always bad pizza.
Always. But maybe it's a group dedicated solely to like generative AI in healthcare or supply chain logistics for e-commerce, something super niche.
Right.
And if you are looking for a highly specialized engineer or if you are hunting for a co-founder, a boutique meetup is unparalleled. You cannot easily find a co-founder in a sea of 10,000 people at SXSW. The signal-to-noise ratio is completely broken.
It's impossible.
But in a room of 20 people who are all enthusiastically geeking out over the exact same obscure problem, vulnerability and trust scale incredibly fast.
And that vulnerability in those small rooms highlights another crucial form of relationship capital. We focus so heavily on peers, clients, and partners, but we often overlook the immense profitability multiplier of mentorship.
Mentorship is huge.
It is. A mentor allows you to absorb the lessons of someone who has already survived the fires you are currently walking through.
Why pay the incredibly high tax of a massive business mistake if someone else has already paid it and is willing to just hand you the receipt?
Precisely. And the infrastructure for this already exists. Organizations like SCORE are phenomenal for this.
Oh yeah, SCORE is great.
They offer free mentorship from veteran, often retired business executives who have successfully scaled and exited companies. They literally volunteer their time specifically to guide the next generation of founders around the landmines they themselves stepped on decades ago.
You know, this brings up something that has been bothering me, and I want to push on this heavily because the standard advice here feels incredibly disconnected from reality.
Okay, let's hear it.
Every single business book, every guru on the internet tells you two things about networking. First, they say, be authentic. And second, they aggressively push the mantra, you must provide value first before you ever ask for a favor.
Right, the classic value first rule.
But let's look at the actual reality. Networking is inherently self-interested. You are there to grow your business, to find clients, to get funding. If there was no self-interest, we wouldn't be analyzing it as a growth engine.
That's a fair point.
And furthermore, let's take the SCORE mentor example. How does a 22-year-old bootstrapping founder operating out of a garage with zero revenue genuinely provide value first to a 60-year-old retired CEO?
Yeah, it sounds a bit ridiculous when you frame it like that.
It feels almost patronizing to tell that young founder to offer value. What leverage do they actually have?
It is a massive paradox, and you are totally right to call it the cliche. Let's dismantle the first part. The inherent self-interest.
Okay.
True authenticity in a professional setting does not mean pretending you don't have a commercial motive. That is actually deeply inauthentic, and veteran business people can smell that false altruism from a mile away.
Oh, 100%. It feels slimy.
Exactly. True authenticity is about being transparent about your ambition while remaining relentlessly respectful of their time and their expertise.
So you don't hide the fact that you are hungry to grow, you own it. But you don't treat them like a vending machine where you put in a compliment and out pops a favor.
Exactly. You are authentic in your curiosity. Now, regarding the 22-year-old providing value to the CEO, the fundamental error is assuming value only means financial leverage or a massive strategic introduction or solving a major operational problem.
Which they can't do.
Right. The veteran does not need your money, and they already have a much better Rolodex than you do. What a young founder possesses is unvarnished market reality.
Market reality.
Yeah. Often, highly successful, established leaders become insulated. They're surrounded by yes men, and they lose touch with the raw, chaotic energy of the current market.
That makes sense. They get too far removed from the ground floor.
Exactly. So as a new founder, your value is your unique perspective. You can offer boots-on-the-ground insight into how a younger demographic is actually adopting a new technology, which might completely contradict the CEO's current market assumptions.
Okay, that is a fantastic reframe. The values as acting as a translator for a demographic or a technology that the veteran is increasingly disconnected from. Like saying, here is how we are actually using this tool, and here is why your traditional approach might completely miss the mark.
Yes, that raw insight is oxygen to a curious leader. Another form of value is hyperrelevance.
What do you mean by that?
Well, sending a generic article is just noise. But if you know the veteran is deeply concerned about, say, a new European data privacy law, and you send a highly specific, obscure white paper analyzing it with a note saying, saw this and thought of our conversation about compliance, that is value. It proves you're actually paying attention to their specific world.
You're doing the filtering for them.
Exactly. And finally, never underestimate the value of asking brilliant, rigorously researched questions.
People love talking about themselves.
They do. Highly successful people generally enjoy reflecting on their journey, but they rarely get asked questions that force them to think deeply. If you ask an ego-boosting, highly specific question that allows them to unpack a complex decision they made years ago, you are giving them the space to feel respected as a mentor. Attention and respect are incredibly potent currencies.
Wow. So the currency isn't capital. The currency is attention, perspective, and genuine respect.
Exactly.
Even with that reframe, I'll admit, navigating this dynamic is a delicate tightrope. It requires high emotional intelligence, and there is just no universal script for it. So I actually want to throw this challenge out to you listening right now.
Yeah, I'd love to hear this.
If you are an established leader or a veteran in your industry, what makes a cold outreach from a newcomer actually stand out to you? What is that specific spark of value they provide that makes you pause, bypass your gatekeepers, and actually say yes to a meeting? Let us know in the comments because we genuinely want to crack this code and see what works in the trenches today.
I think the psychology of that initial outreach leads us directly into the final and arguably most critical phase of this engine.
Yeah.
Because all the strategic placement, all the authenticity and value creation completely collapses if you fail at tactical execution in the aftermath.
The aftermath. Because the fortune is entirely in the follow-up.
Completely.
Let's talk about the immediate aftermath of an event. You've attended the boutique meetup, you've had the virtual coffee, you've successfully navigated the authenticity paradox. Now what? Because the reality is, I know brilliant founders who have digital stacks of new LinkedIn connections and a literal drawer full of business cards, and they just sit there gathering dust. Nothing ever materializes.
And that is the tragedy of unharvested capital. The absolute, non-negotiable golden rule of execution is the 24-hour rule.
A 24-hour rule.
If you want to successfully transition someone from a fleeting transactional encounter into a functional, relational, weak tie, you must send a personalized message, whether that's an email or a direct message, within 24 hours of the interaction.
What is the underlying mechanism there? Why not wait a few days so you don't seem overly eager? Like, play it cool a little bit.
Because human memory is volatile, and the emotional resonance of a meeting decays at an incredibly rapid rate. If you wait 3 days, the context of your conversation has been overwritten by 100 other minor crises.
That's true.
By reaching out within 24 hours, you are cementing the neurological connection, while the memory of your face, your voice, and your shared interaction is still entirely fresh. But, and this is big aver, but you have to consider the environment you are sending that message into. You are battling a massive external force, inbox fatigue.
Oh, man. Inbox fatigue is the silent killer of networking.
It really is.
The average executive or founder is receiving hundreds of emails a day. They are essentially triage medics, just scanning for emergencies and aggressively deleting anything that looks like generic noise.
Exactly. Their brain is actively wired to filter you out. And this is where most follow-ups fail. A founder will send an email that says, "Hi, Sarah, great to meet you at the summit yesterday. Let's keep in touch."
I've sent that email. We've all sent that email.
Right. But that email provides zero cognitive hooks. Worse, it assigns homework to the recipient.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, when Sarah reads that, she has to expend mental energy trying to remember who you are, what you talked about, and figure out what keeping in touch actually requires her to do. It is cognitive friction, so she deletes it. It dies in the inbox.
So the alternative is completely removing that cognitive friction through extreme specificity.
Yes.
You have to use callbacks. A callback is a direct anchor to a specific moment in your interaction. It could be a shared joke about the terrible coffee at the venue, a reference to a specific regulatory trend you debated, or a link to a solution regarding a problem they casually mentioned.
Exactly. You anchor yourself to the conversation.
So instead of the generic email, you write, "Hi, Sarah. Loved our debate on how generative AI is going to impact supply chain logistics. Here is that article I mentioned detailing how mid-sized firms are currently bypassing the new regulations. Would love to hear your take on this next month." Because that specific callback fundamentally changes the dynamic. It proves you are actively, deeply listening. It provides immediate value by continuing the intellectual thread, and it requires almost zero cognitive load for her to remember who you are. It elevates you from a random encounter to a respected peer.
And when you master that sequence, when you combine the strategic placement at the right events to find those weak ties, you approach them with the authenticity of genuine curiosity, and you lock the relationship in with a highly specific, frictionless follow-up within 24 hours.
Yeah.
That is when the engine fires on all cylinders.
That is the moment the math changes. And that is the ultimate paradigm shift we are trying to convey today. It is about transitioning your identity. You stop being a solo operator, isolated in a silo, fighting tooth and nail for every single inch of market share.
Right.
You evolve into a connected leader, a leader whose trusted, expansive web of weak ties, peers, and mentors actively pulls them upward, sending opportunities, warnings, and resources their way before the rest of the market even knows they exist.
It really is a profound structural shift in how you operate your business.
If you want to read more, check out our blog at intothemargins.com/playbook.
And I want to leave you with one final, slightly uncomfortable diagnostic test as you look ahead.
Okay, hit us.
Open up your calendar for the next 30 days. Look at every single meeting, every Zoom call, every lunch. If every single interaction on your schedule is internal with your own team or external with an already existing client, your network is actively decaying.
Ouch.
You are coasting on old capital, and eventually that account will run dry. So the question you need to answer is this. Who is the one person you can reach out to today for a 15-minute virtual coffee that scares you just a little bit?
I love that metric. If your outreach doesn't induce a little bit of fear or imposter syndrome, you aren't aiming high enough to build a new bridge. What a perfect note to wrap up on. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We know that time is an entrepreneur's single most valuable asset, and we never take it lightly that you chose to spend it here, diving into the margins with us. If this deep dive sparked an idea, or if you have an answer to our authenticity paradox challenge about what makes cold outreach stand out to you, please drop a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a deep dive. And definitely check out the backlog of other deep dives on the playbook for more strategies on driving real, sustainable profitability. Until next time, keep building those connections, and we'll see you out there.